Arizona Territory, 1884. On a ranch several miles from the nearest town, 27-year-old Mariea stood beside her bedroom window and stared into the darkness. The ranch had once been a place of laughter, hard work, and family pride. Her father had built it from nothing, raising cattle and earning the respect of neighbors across the territory. But those days felt distant now. 5 years earlier, her father had died after a sudden illness. The loss had shattered Mariea and her mother. For a while they struggled alone, trying to keep the ranch running. Then her mother married Walter Briggs, a man who appeared charming in public but revealed a different nature behind closed doors. Walter never struck anyone, yet his presence filled the house with tension. He controlled every dollar that entered the ranch accounts. He criticized every decision Mariea made. He spoke as though the land belonged to him, even though it had been left to her by her father. Ranch hands came and went because they disliked working under him. Debts slowly increased. Mariea worked from dawn until evening to keep things together. She rode fences, checked cattle, repaired equipment, and handled bookkeeping whenever Walter allowed her near the records. Despite her efforts, he constantly reminded her that a woman could not manage such responsibilities alone. Her mother rarely argued with him anymore. Years of pressure had made her quiet and cautious. Whenever Mariea tried discussing Walter's behavior, her mother would lower her eyes and change the subject. One warm evening, several days before the annual town gathering, Mariea entered the house after finishing chores. Voices drifted from Walter's office. She intended to pass by unnoticed, but a familiar name stopped her. Her own. The office door stood slightly open. Remaining silent, she moved closer. Walter sat across from a wealthy cattle buyer named Horace Denton, a man nearly twice Mariea's age. Papers lay on the desk between them. "She will agree eventually," Walter said confidently. "And if she refuses," Denton asked, "she will understand where her future lies." The men chuckled. Mariea felt unease tighten her chest. Walter tapped the papers. "Once the engagement is announced, everything becomes much simpler. The partnership benefits us all." Denton nodded. "Especially the ranch." Maria's stomach dropped. They were discussing her future as though she were livestock being sold at market. She remained hidden as Walter continued explaining plans for an engagement announcement during the upcoming gathering. The arrangement had already been discussed with influential people in town. He spoke as though the decision had already been made. Quietly, Mariea stepped away from the door. Her hands trembled. For years she had tolerated Walter's control because she hoped circumstances would improve. Now she understood the truth. If she stayed, he would continue making choices for her life until she had no voice left. That night she sat on her bed thinking about the few relatives she trusted. One memory returned again and again. Her Aunt Clara, who lived several towns away and had always encouraged her independence. By midnight, Mariea had made her decision. She would leave. Working silently, she packed a small canvas bag. Into it she placed a photograph of her father, a change of clothes, a few dollars she had secretly saved, and her mother's old silver necklace. The house remained quiet. A clock ticked somewhere downstairs. Mariea listened carefully before opening her bedroom window. Cool air drifted inside. Her heart pounded so loudly she feared someone might hear it. She climbed onto the sill and looked back once more. Everything familiar stood behind her. The room where she had grown up, the walls filled with memories, and the life she had always known. Then she lowered herself outside. Her boots touched the ground softly. Without hesitation, she crossed the yard and slipped into the darkness. Clouds covered much of the moon. The ranch buildings soon disappeared behind her. She followed a narrow trail leading east, hoping to reach the railroad station before sunrise. If she could buy a ticket and travel toward her aunt's town, Walter would struggle to find her. For several hours she walked steadily. Coyotes howled in the distance. Wind moved through dry grass. The farther she traveled, the freer she felt. Yet freedom came with uncertainty. Before dawn, fatigue began slowing her pace. The landscape grew unfamiliar. In the darkness, she missed a turn and wandered into a maze of rocky hills and dry creek beds. Every direction looked the same. As the eastern horizon brightened, exhaustion overwhelmed her. She stumbled repeatedly and struggled to keep moving. Then she heard hoofbeats. A rider emerged from the morning haze. Instinctively, Mariea turned away. The stranger guided a black horse closer. He wore a weathered hat, a long coat, and a revolver at his side. Still frightened, Mariea tried to run. Her strength failed almost immediately. She lost her footing on loose stones and began falling toward a rocky slope. Before she struck the ground, strong hands caught her. The rider steadied her and helped her remain upright. As the first rays of sunlight spread across the desert, he studied her worried face. "Miss," he said gently, "who are you running from?" Mariea looked into the stranger's eyes, uncertain whether she had found danger or hope. She hesitated before answering. For several moments, Mariea said nothing. The stranger did not press her. He simply guided her toward a shaded patch of ground beside a cluster of rocks. His black horse waited nearby, calm and patient. "You look exhausted," he said. "Drink some water first." Mariea accepted the canteen cautiously. The cool water eased the dryness in her throat. She studied the man carefully. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with steady eyes and a weathered face shaped by years beneath the western sun. "My name is Jack Callahan," he said. The name sounded familiar. Almost immediately, Mariea remembered hearing it in town. Jack Callahan was a gunslinger known throughout the territory. Stories about him traveled from ranch to ranch. Some painted him as dangerous. Others described him as a man who protected settlers and travelers when trouble appeared. "You are the gunslinger," she said quietly. Jack gave a faint smile. "I suppose that depends on who is telling the story." Despite his calm manner, Mariea remained cautious. Yet something about him felt different from the frightening figure she had imagined. "Now," Jack said, sitting beside the campfire he had quickly prepared, "tell me why a respectable young woman is crossing the desert alone before sunrise." Mariea hesitated before finally explaining everything. She spoke about her father's ranch. She described Walter Briggs and the years of control that followed. She told him about the conversation she overheard between Walter and Horace Denton. When she finished, Jack stared into the fire for a moment. "That was a brave decision," he said. "It felt more desperate than brave. Sometimes they are the same thing." The words lingered in her mind. After breakfast, Jack offered to escort her toward the town where Aunt Clara lived. "You should not be traveling alone," he said. Mariea considered refusing. She had trusted the wrong people before. But the open desert stretched endlessly around them, and she knew he was right. Together they began the journey. The days that followed carried them across some of the most beautiful country Mariea had ever seen. Golden grasslands rolled beneath vast blue skies. Rocky ridges rose from distant valleys. Clear streams wound through cottonwood groves. Traveling beside Jack felt surprisingly easy. He spoke little when silence suited the moment, yet he always listened carefully whenever she wished to talk. Gradually, Mariea learned more about him. Years earlier, Jack had worked as a deputy marshal. He had planned to marry a schoolteacher named Alina. Before the wedding, illness swept through the region. Alina died within weeks. Afterward, Jack spent years drifting across the West. "I kept moving because standing still reminded me of what I lost," he admitted one evening beside a campfire. Mariea watched the flames dance against the darkness. "That must have been difficult." It was. Neither spoke for several moments. For the first time, Mariea understood that the man beside her carried wounds no one could see. The journey continued. One afternoon they encountered a family whose wagon wheel had broken along a rough trail. Without hesitation, Jack spent hours helping repair it. Mariea assisted by gathering tools and water. The grateful family offered them supper. As they shared a meal beneath the evening sky, Mariea noticed how naturally Jack treated everyone with respect. The image she had formed from old rumors slowly disappeared. Back at the ranch, meanwhile, Walter Briggs discovered her absence. His reaction was immediate. Rather than admitting the truth, he began spreading a different story. He claimed Mariea had been deceived by an unknown stranger. He suggested she might have been kidnapped. The tale traveled quickly through nearby settlements. Some people believed him. Others remained uncertain. Walter encouraged several men to search for her. More importantly, he hoped to protect his own reputation before questions emerged. Unaware of the growing rumors, Mariea and Jack continued traveling westward. With each passing day, Mariea felt stronger. She no longer thought only about escaping. She began imagining a future, one where she made her own choices. One where no one dictated whom she should marry or how she should live. Jack encouraged those thoughts. "You already proved you can change your life," he told her while crossing a shallow river. "I only ran away." "No," he replied. "You chose your own direction." The words gave her confidence. Several days later, dark clouds gathered across the horizon. By afternoon, a powerful dust storm swept over the plains. Visibility vanished almost completely. Jack spotted an abandoned trading post and guided them inside moments before the storm struck. Wind rattled the wooden walls throughout the evening. Inside the shelter, lantern light cast warm shadows across the room. For hours they talked. Mariea spoke honestly about the loneliness she had felt since her father's death. Jack admitted that grief had kept him distant from others for years. Somewhere during that conversation, an unexpected friendship deepened. Neither mentioned feelings beyond friendship. Neither needed to. The connection was already there. The storm finally passed by morning. When they reached the next town later that day, however, new trouble awaited them. Near the general store, townspeople stared as they arrived. A newspaper notice hung beside the entrance. Maria's name appeared on it. Jack read the announcement carefully. Walter had reported concerns about her disappearance. Worse, local authorities had been told that a gunslinger might be transporting her against her will. Jack folded the paper slowly. At that moment, a deputy emerged from across the street and began walking toward them. The badge on his vest caught the afternoon sunlight. Mariea felt her pulse quicken. The deputy stopped a few feet away. "I have some questions," he said. Jack remained calm. Mariea looked from the deputy to the gathering crowd. For years she had allowed others to speak for her. Now she faced a choice: stay silent once again, or finally tell the truth herself. The deputy's eyes moved from Jack to Mariea. "Ma'am," he said, "are you traveling of your own free will?" A crowd gathered along the boardwalk. Shopkeepers paused their work and ranchers stepped from nearby businesses. For a moment, Mariea felt the old temptation to remain silent. Then she remembered climbing from her window, crossing the desert alone, and choosing her own future. "Yes," she said clearly, "I am." The deputy nodded. Mariea took a deep breath and told the entire story. She explained how Walter Briggs had gained control after marrying her mother, how he managed every part of the ranch, and how he planned to force her into an unwanted marriage with Horace Denton. The crowd grew quiet. When she finished, the deputy asked whether anyone knew facts that supported or contradicted her account. An elderly store owner stepped forward. He explained that Walter had ordered legal papers weeks earlier and discussed marriage arrangements connected to ranch property. Another resident recalled hearing Walter and Denton speak confidently about the ranch's future as though Maria's consent did not matter. Soon more townspeople shared similar observations. Individually, the details seemed small. Together, they formed a clear picture. Word spread rapidly. By late afternoon, Walter arrived. Dust covered his coat from hard riding. He marched toward the crowd, expecting support. "There she is," he announced. "I've been searching everywhere." His confidence faded when he saw the deputy standing beside Mariea. Walter insisted he had acted only from concern. He claimed Mariea misunderstood his intentions. Yet every explanation raised new questions. When witnesses repeated what they had heard and seen, Walter struggled to answer. For the first time, Mariea watched him lose control. The deputy remained calm and professional. Rather than arguing, he focused on facts. Within days, authorities reviewed ranch accounts and business agreements connected to Walter's management. The investigation uncovered poor decisions, unpaid obligations, and arrangements that benefited Walter far more than the ranch. There were no gunfights and no dramatic confrontations. The truth simply emerged piece by piece until it could not be ignored. Walter's influence quickly collapsed. Neighbors withdrew their support. Business partners became cautious. Most important of all, Maria's mother finally found her voice. She admitted she had often disagreed with Walter but had been afraid to challenge him. Mother and daughter spent long evenings talking honestly for the first time in years. The conversations were difficult, yet healing began. With legal matters resolved, control of the ranch returned fully to Mariea. Experienced ranch hands came back. Fences were repaired. Records were organized. Plans were made. Slowly, the ranch recovered. Throughout this time, Jack remained nearby. He never tried to make decisions for Mariea. When she asked for advice, he offered it. When she preferred to decide alone, he respected her choice. The more time they spent together, the more she appreciated his quiet strength. Several weeks later, Jack saddled his horse. The ranch was thriving again. In his mind, his work was finished. Mariea found him near the barn. "You're really leaving?" she asked. "That was always the plan," he replied. She thanked him for everything. Jack tipped his hat, mounted his horse, and rode away. Mariea watched until he disappeared beyond a distant rise. The ranch suddenly felt much quieter. She spent the day working, but her thoughts kept returning to him. By sunset, she finally admitted the truth. Jack had become far more than a traveling companion. Before dawn the next morning, she saddled her horse and followed the trail he had taken. The sky glowed with the colors of sunrise. Several miles from the ranch, she spotted a familiar rider atop a hill overlooking the valley. Jack turned as she approached. "Mariea," she smiled. "I think you forgot something." He looked puzzled. "What, me?" For a moment neither spoke, then both laughed. The tension disappeared. "You rescued me," Mariea said. Jack shook his head. "No. You rescued yourself the moment you climbed out that window." The words touched her because she knew they were true. He had offered help, friendship, and support. The courage had always been hers. "I don't know exactly what the future looks like," she said. "Neither do I," Jack answered. "Would you like to find out together?" A warm smile crossed his face. "I would." Months later, life looked very different. The ranch prospered under Maria's leadership. Her mother was happier than she had been in years. Neighbors respected the determination that carried Mariea through difficult times. As for Jack, he settled nearby instead of continuing his lonely travels. Together, they built a relationship founded on trust, patience, and mutual respect. Nearly a year after their first meeting, they stood outside the ranch house watching the sun rise over the desert. Golden light stretched across the fields. The scene reminded Mariea of another dawn, when she had been frightened and uncertain. Now she felt only gratitude. She had learned that freedom begins with a brave decision. She had learned that real strength often appears quietly. And she understood that true heroes do not control the lives of others. They help people find the courage to shape their own. The ranch house echoed with laughter again, and every sunrise seemed brighter than the one before for everyone on the ranch there. As the sun climbed above the horizon, Mariea smiled and stepped forward into the future she had chosen for herself.